Oh, hi. One of my friends likes cats. It is so funny. And he wrote back, morning has broken. Looks like I'll take the rest of the day to put it back together. I'm like, okay. Well, how do you feel about the morning?
Okay, everybody, I didn't know it was 10:05. You know how stickler I am for starting on time. So, sorry about that. So, if everybody wants to come on in and get themselves a spot, that would be awesome. I want to thank you, everybody, for coming today. My name's Alicia, and I'm with Nebraska Savvy Seniors Empowerment Seminars. How many have never been to one of these seminars before? Raise your hand.
Listen.
Good. Okay. Well, we have a surprise for you because we have a fun panelist today. So, we're all here for the same thing, aren't we? We're all facing the same thing. We're all on this journey together. We're all aging. Some of us are caregiving for other people. We're all planning our futures, and we're taking care of the people that we love and involved in our family. And sometimes it feels kind of uncertain. There's no roadmap. Just like when we brought our babies home from the hospital, they didn't come with instructions. And there's no instruction book on how to age and do it right, is there? So that's why we're here. We're here to learn and share with each other. So I just want to share a little story with you. I was with some clients a couple months ago, and we were sitting down around their kitchen table. And the mom we were talking about some issues, and she's like, I just wish somebody would tell me the truth. You know, because she gets all these different mixed messages from different people trying to sell her some things. And, you know, she was just really frustrated. And I thought, you know, that's why we're here. Wouldn't it be nice to just have somebody tell you the truth and not have to worry about someone selling you something or mining data from your inquiries? And so that's why we're here. We just want to help you on your journey and give you good, straight information. I want you to look at somebody. Thanks for turning that up. Look at the person next to you, and I just want you to say to them, give them a smile, that we're in this together. Okay? And we're searching for the truth. And we're gonna find it, and it's about time, right? Okay, all right. So that's why we're here, and that's why our seminars are here. We're not here to sugarcoat anything. This is no pressure, there's no sales pitch, and if anybody tries to sell you something in here, you let me know. With that in mind, I want you to relax today because we have a couple of guest speakers who have some great stories to share. And my son, TJ, is going to be the moderator for today's seminar. So if you don't like how it goes, you can talk to him about it afterwards, okay? So here you go, TJ.
Hey, TJ.
Thank you. How are you guys all doing this morning? Okay, so my name is TJ Krasl. I'm sure you guys all know who I am. But today's theme, we're doing Senior Stories Live. So if you haven't known yet, we do have a podcast called Senior Stories. I do have some of your guys' surveys where you've marked that you're interested in being part of that, and I haven't gotten to all of them yet, but I will. If you put your name down there, I will give you a call at some point. So this morning we've got a couple of our past podcast guests on here, on our panel. We've got Harley Ferguson and we've got Paul Durbin. So they do have their podcast out, and you can check their stories out in much greater detail than what you're going to hear today. But we're going to go ahead and start by just asking you guys to introduce yourself and kind of tell your story.
Go ahead, Harley.
Here you go. This one. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Harley Ferguson. For those of you who know me, and for those of you who don't, I'm still Harley Ferguson. That's a joke. Thank you for catching that. I'm really happy to be here, thanks to TJ, and I encountered my friend now forever, and I'll hand that to you.
Can everybody hear me okay? Hi, my name is Paul. Yes, Harley and I just met over by the north entrance, and with the hat. We Vietnam vets, you see another Vietnam vet, welcome home brother, and as soon as I saw his hat, welcome home brother, and then I said, were you on the panel? He said, yes. I said, well, so am I. So, yes, PJ and I go back to a Monday veteran conference. That's where we met, over at 84th and Oak Street. So, I'll hand it back to Harley, and he can start sharing, and then I'll follow up.
So what do you want us to do?
So just go ahead and give us a kind of maybe not as detailed as we were on the podcast, but give them a kind of an idea of what your life is like.
Well, my life is pretty good. It is it's largely looking over my shoulder now. So most of my life is behind me. I was thinking as I was driving over that most of my dreams are about what's already happened and not so much about what's in front of me. So that's a real perspective that I have about where I am today. I am reasonably happily married. And that's my version. If you ask my wife, you might get a different version. But we've been married for 48 years, and that's a pretty good milestone in these days, and we're happy to do that. Although what we say to each other on our anniversary is that we make a contract for another year. That's how we approach that. I couldn't be here, I couldn't be alive without my partner, and that's Jo, and she's at home probably still drinking coffee in her housecoat. So that's kind of our life. We spend most of our days helping our son with his business, and we're honored and proud to be part of his life and his business, and that keeps us active and challenges our memory, which is, as you probably might be aware, that gets threatened every year. So we're happy to be there and doing that. And that is in the real estate inspection business, so it challenges our ability to kind of keep track of things and schedule things and do billing and all of those things that are helpful to us and helpful to our son. But most of all, we're glad to be in our children's lives, of which we have 3 that are here in Lincoln. And then we have a gaggle of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, numbering 22 in our clan. And we're happy about that. I know I'm probably too young to claim that we have many grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but we do. And we're happy about that. We're grateful. And I think it's reasonable to say that we are living in gratitude every day. And interestingly enough, Paul and I were talking, and we've been talking constantly since we met. What a pleasure that is. And I have to tell you that, and as we talk and maybe reveal more about our lifestyles and our backgrounds, I can tell you that I have gone from being a child of a preacher and a grandchild of a preacher and a great-grandchild of a preacher that goes back into the days of the Adventists and Quakers. So I was raised in a religious home and was taught all of the catechism of a Protestant upbringing, and sometimes very strict. I used to say my grandfather loved me fiercely, and indeed he did. And then I went through a period of agnosticism, and largely, I think, from my Vietnam experience, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But I'm not there anymore. My life has been a journey. That's a term that's been used today. So I think it's safe to say that I'm still on a journey of one kind or another. Every day reveals new friends like this. And even if I develop Alzheimer's, I'll still be developing new friends every day. And I'm looking forward to that. But nonetheless, I think it's an honor to be here today with you and to share whatever I can share with you and interact with you and make some new friends. I'm already seeing some smiles in return, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you for letting me be here today.
Thank you, Harley. And Paul, what is your life like currently?
A question. The chair's a little uncomfortable. May I stand up?
Yeah.
I do better. I'm ADD also, so. I want to reemphasize something Harley just said. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for a woman from Jamaica
Paul,
that
go
came
ahead and,
to Lincoln in.
Hey, Paul, go ahead and bring your mic just a little closer to
Oh,
you.
sorry. Who happened to choose to come to Lincoln, Nebraska to get away from her mother and get a quality education at Illinois Wesleyan. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for her. We've been married 22 years. I'll tell you more later. My hometown is a small town in upstate New York. Starting in my 7th grade year, I started getting razzing from upper students. Well, you're getting special treatment. Your dad's a teacher. Well, my dad was a dedicated junior high math science teacher and a lay preacher. And my way of dealing with it was, well, I can be as unbookish as you. So I denied any interest in learning, formally. But meantime, Dad was encouraging me to read the Bible. I did, especially passages dealing with knowledge and reason. And then every Sunday, I could count on an erudite sermon from the Reverend Leonard Hackney in my hometown church. And I realized, looking back, I was planting seeds. But anyway, I finished high school. I hadn't a clue what I was going to do. I was going to join the military. But family and friends said, oh, no, you need to go to college right now. And so I went to college. And they said, well, why don't you major in business? You probably won't fail. You make good money. I majored in business, but I actually spent my time on math and philosophy as I look back. Came home from college. I wasn't going to have anything to do with teaching. No, nothing. No. Came home from college in January '66. I passed all the tests to go to Officer Candidate School, Air Force, and the Air Force closed the school. So the Air Force said, well, look, you just reapply, wait for a month or two and reapply. And so I went through a bunch of this. I'm working home as, near hometown as a stock clerk bidding for time. And in May '66, what now feels like a setup, I was enabled to open the door to my mission, purpose, calling. In September '66, I started teaching business, math, and typing at a place near my hometown in upstate New York. And I said, I'm still going to serve. I don't know how, but I'm going to serve. Well, in January '67, I got a draft notice. And the town father came to me and said, look, you're a teacher. You just go to the draft board and tell them, no, I can't serve. And I said, no, I can't do that. I need to serve. So I said to the principal, let me finish the year. It was a he did. And in July '67, I put on a green uniform to bought Private in Uncle Sam's Army. Ended up serving 2 years, went to Vietnam. Short story, I know what it's like being on the receiving end of friendly fire and non-friendly fire. Not any mortar attacks. I'm dealing with some PTSD issues, but not like the guys in the jungle. Anyway, but I finished my 2 years, and I went back to school with my GI Bill, and I drank deep of the well of knowledge. All kind of adversity, but I'll tell you later. But I drank deep of the well of knowledge. And I decided, well, I'm going to be a math major. That's where certainty is. Well, he encountered a problem right off. Look, I can follow the steps in many proofs, but I don't understand. So I'm the guy, excuse me, sir, or ma'am, I don't understand. And ultimately, I found my way into philosophy because that's where questions of why and knowledge are focused on. And due to a friend of mine, an intense Jewish philosopher said to me one day, Paul, you need to sit in on Nelson Potter's class on a guy named Immanuel Kant. And so I went, and I only sat in on his class 7 times. I couldn't sit in on it. He retired, and I'm teaching math on a Navy ship. But he let me know that he was keeping one student, that was me, working on, I've been beginning to find my way dealing with a guy named Immanuel Kant. That's the focus. And what he had to say about knowledge, and then along the way, history of the calculus that wound me up. But I mentioned I had these adversities, issues, and being two different disciplines, math and philosophy, it doesn't sit well, particularly among many philosophers here. And I began to sense this program isn't really proper duty to my quest. And 2 days before my thesis advisor died, he said to me, Paul, you don't need this degree. You've already got the training you need. It was a little bit deflating initially, but now I realize it decades later, he was spot on. And so I'm semi-retired. I'm mentoring elementary students. Well, I'm kind of on a leave from mentoring. I will be going back in January. In early September, visiting my friend that we get together for movie night. Walking on an unlighted section of sidewalk, I didn't see a limb hanging all over the sidewalk, and I went down hard on this hip, and well, I got back up. I was nauseous, and I had to hang onto a tree, get my head straight, and I walked back to my car, and I drove home. Said to my wife, well, I fell down, I'm a little stiff, let me ice this down. I did. Got up the next morning, and I'm walking up and down stairs until early afternoon. And then the stiffness came in big time. And so my wife said, I think we better take you to the VA and get checked out. And ultimately, it kept several hours to get straight. And he said, you're spending the night, you've got a simple fracture here. Anyway, I'm on the mend. And so I will be going back mentoring elementary students. And I'm working on what would have been my dissertation. I'm on my quest, which is proper duty to my mission, purpose, call. So I appreciate the opportunity of sharing with you, and whatever questions, comments, why, feel free. Thank you.
Harley, why don't you give us a little background about you? Thank you, Paul.
Oh, background, there's a lot. How long do you have? I was born in 1950, which makes me 75. And that's, I know that may be considered, I remember a time when somebody said to me, they were 75 and I think I was 50 at the time, and they kept referring to me as a young man. So now I find myself often referring to other people as young man, young woman, because I'm now one of the oldest people in the room. So there you go. Anyway, I think what's unique about, I like to think is unique about my birth is my mother and father were working with my grandfather, who was, and because they were preachers, they didn't make much money. So often they took second jobs in order to raise, the family. And I had 2 older siblings at the time. And they were boring water wells in Iowa. So they were working with another guy who owned the well drilling operation. And so they were as it happened to be in Audubon, Iowa. And they were it was during a snowstorm, and they were staying with a friend of the family in the basement of the home. And my mother was obviously really pregnant, seriously pregnant. And the guy who owned the drilling operation said, "Don't worry, Faithy, if anything happens, I can get you to the hospital. My old drilling truck will go anywhere." So, and my grandfather, her father, was there. And my father, of course, was like anybody, any expectant father, he was useless at the time. So everything was good. My mother really wasn't worried. But when the time came, there was no hospital to go to. So there was no hospital or medical doctor in Audubon, Iowa. So after calling around, they found that there is a home of a midwife. And so I was born in the home, one of the spare bedrooms of a midwife. And my mother often would reflect on that experience, is that it was just warm and comfortable, and everyone was so thoughtful. And she said it was one of the most blessed of the 5 births that she had, and it was a wonderful experience. And so when I was named after my father's best friend in college, and his name was Harley Goodwin. And Harley, Harlie, as you can see from this, is Gaelic. So it's interpreted as a shire of hares. So first names at that time were given often for events or places of birth. So before you and I, give first names after our family or our ancestors, I was named after Harley, who was a first generation Irishman. And they spoke, in his family, they spoke Gaelic. And so I was given that name. So when my mother, one day when I told her what the interpretation of my first name, she said, "That's just as comfortable as when you were born." So I was born in the Shire of Hares. So a shire or a field of rabbits. If you think about that. And so I was blessed from March 18th of 1950 when I was born. And then I was fortunate enough to be loved throughout my childhood. And even though I was or am a sad victim of a separated family, my parents were divorced when I was 4 years old. So in those days, in the 50s, that was a pretty rough thing, as we used to think about that. And we were split, although nowadays it's 40% of the population is, kids have, double the parents. So it's not as big a deal, but it certainly was back then. But luckily for me, I was raised by my grandmother and grandfather, who were pastors of the Advent Christian Church in a little town in Ohio. And as I said, my grandfather loved me fiercely, and my grandmother knew how to really get mileage out of a Kleenex she kept tucked in her sleeve. And you might remember those days. That's when a Kleenex went a really long way. It's not like the ones you can read the paper through now. But anyway, my grandmother taught me everything that I learned about being a good person. And she was always the example of a kind and loving person. I was lucky to be exposed to someone who never had an unkind word for anyone else. And even though I had a period in my life where I denied all of that, I denied my upbringing, I denied my faith, and all of that, that stuck with me. And it was an anchor for me, and not something that I withdrew voluntarily from, but there was, life has a way of putting walls up, you know, in our lives and on our journey. And so I had a few things I had to crawl over and lumber over and trip over in order to get where I am. And fortunately for me, that was my childhood. And I later reconciled with my father and was lucky to spend a couple of years with him before he passed. And rather unpleasantly and unexpectedly at 66 years old. So when I turned 66, that was a milestone I wanted to achieve. As you can probably appreciate, I just wanted to live beyond 66, so that was a threat to me for a while. And 66 was the year, when I turned 66, it was also the year I retired from 17 years as the principal educator for St. Jude Medical, which was one of the major medical device companies. And I was lucky to have achieved a number of roles with St. Jude Medical and in the medical industry. I'd like to say that after coming back from Vietnam, I too had a sabbatical from reality, and it wasn't until 1980 when I went back to college that I found something that was really turned a corner for me. And that was a degree in respiratory therapy, and it was my opportunity to fulfill my calling that my grandmother always thought that I was going to be called to the ministry. And when I got my degree in respiratory therapy, I said, Grandma, I've found my calling, and it's to serve other people and to contribute to their health. And I have never looked back from that choice. And it's been a real blessing for me to be involved with that, and then healthcare on an international scale. And I can tell you that has really set my compass for a long time. And I try to keep that compass straight. Every now and then I veer off course, were it not for my wife and other people in my world that helped me find my way back on track. And that's what I try to do these days, although I don't have the responsibility, thank goodness, that I had in the past. So that kind of brings you up to date with all of the other specific life event details. So maybe we can get to that whenever it's the best time.
Yeah. All right, Paul, I'm going to ask you, just kind of tell us a little bit about your military background.
So as I indicated, when the town father said to me, well, you're a teacher, you don't have to go. And I said, no. Growing up, I graduated from high school in 1961. There was a big emphasis on serving in the military. So I had agreed to go to college, but I'm going to serve. And so then, as I indicated, when I got the draft notice, I finished the year. And July 67, I put on a green uniform to Buck Private in Uncle Sam's Army. No thanks, I want nothing to do with being an officer. I recognized, as I look back, yeah, I had a college degree, but I had no clue on where I was going, let alone trying to be a leader of anybody else. So I ended up as a Buck Private. After basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, I got sent to Fort Gordon, Georgia. Indicated how I'll back it up a bit. At the end of basic training, the drill sergeant came to me and said, "You're one of the cream of the crop. You're going to military police school." Oh, well, okay, fine. So I get down to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and half the guys hadn't graduated from high school. Uncle Sam needed military police, but I had one of the best teachers I ever had taught military law. Awesome man. And I finished the 8 weeks, came home, had about a 20-day leave, and then went to Vietnam. And ended up at the 90th Replacement Depot in Bien Hoa. And we were there 3 days. And the third day, we're out on some parade field, and the guy's up in front with a clipboard reading off, and I'm hearing 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, Big Red 1, and then I heard Durbin and Davis, 56 Artillery Air Defense. And I said to myself, my chances of coming home just doubled, because North Vietnam didn't have an Air Force. And so, okay, yeah, I got assigned to 56 Artillery, and when they found out, the chaplain and maybe the adjutant, it's 50-some years ago, I don't remember precisely, I was clearly older, and they said, what'd you do in civilian life? And I said, well, I was a teacher. And they said, look, you don't want to be military police, they just do guard duty. Why don't you go up and OJT as a battalion S1 clerk? Because I've been teaching typing. Oh, okay, fine. So I did. And I will never forget, I walked into the battalion office, and the executive officer was Major Felton A. Kemp, former teacher coach. Now, I'm E2 when I walked in. And for the whole time I'm there, he never called me Private Durbin. No, it was Mr. D, because I'd been a teacher. So, yeah, I was battalion S1 clerk. I know what it's like being on the receiving end of friendly fire, non-friendly fire, and nutty mortar attacks. I now realize, as I said, I got out of the Army and I went back to school and drank deep, and I buried some feelings. And about 10 years ago, I started having these, scare the hell out of my wife, wake up screaming and shouting incoming. And at any rate, I'm getting some treatment for PTSD. But it's not like the guys in the jungle, but my focus on my mission, purpose, calling as a math teacher, philosopher, helps me keep a perspective. But still, some of the PTSD and they're more than bad dreams. I'm forgetting what they're called, but at any rate, I have some of these. But I'm a proud veteran. I went through probably a decade of denying that I was a vet. I went back to school, I'm a silent vet. But I came to the Midwest in 1980, got a job teaching at Doane College. And I sensed a healing, a welcoming, and that has only continued as that was 1980. I'm now the historian in the Legion down in Hickman. That's my way of serving. Just as one short story, if I felt the way I do now when I got out of the Army in '69, I'd have stayed in the reserves. But no, it wasn't cool being a Vietnam vet then. And so, and again, I buried things and went back to school. But no, I'm a proud vet. Wear my jacket, thanks to my wife. She got me the hat and the jacket that, oh yeah. Giving back the blessings of growing up in this country. Yeah. So, yay.
Great. Thank you for your service. And Harley, same question.
Yeah, I entered into the military after this old timer to my left. And we talked about that when we were talking about when we were in country, which often vets do, and I find myself when I'm in the grocery store, if I come out after an exceptional long time and my wife is in the car, she said, "You met a vet, didn't you?" Yeah, that's what happens. And you always ask, when were you there? And I was in Vietnam in '70 and '71, and when I meet a vet that was there before me, I like to say that thanks for blazing a trail for me, because I have to give them, these vets, credit for being there at a different time when things were tough. And I used to get the question about my military service when they say, were you ever on the front line? And in Vietnam, there were no front lines. It was everywhere. There was no place that was safe. There was the illusion of being safe, but there was no place that was safe. And just ask the people that were there for the Tet Offensive, and those people that didn't come back, and those 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old people that were cannon fodder. And you know, when I enlisted in the Air Force, it was because I didn't want to be a grunt, and I didn't want to be cannon fodder. And there was enough TV broadcast about live stuff going on, and as you might remember, there were nightly news accounts, and everybody was glued to the TV watching the latest broadcast from South Vietnam, and there was, and it was the first time in our history that there was live broadcast, and we saw men at war, and it's as though we had forgotten the price that our fathers and grandfathers paid. And I'm telling you this in context because it skewed my consideration. And when people ask me, why did you volunteer? I didn't volunteer because I wanted to go to Vietnam. I volunteered because I didn't want to go to Vietnam. And that's the truth. And I thought that I was gonna get drafted, and the draft was in place. I had signed up for the draft. I had a music scholarship from high school to Memphis State University. And when I got my college deferment, I thought that was helpful. And then my college deferment was rescinded, and then I was reclassified 1A. And I knew that I was gonna be in the shit. And forgive me, I mean no insult to anybody, but that's the vernacular. And that's only the surface of what I experienced. So anyway, I volunteered for the Air Force, and I scored well enough on the testing that they said, you really score high in communications. And I said, okay, that's good. So after basic, I was sent to radio operator school. And while a lot of my colleagues from radio operator school went directly to Vietnam, I went to an Air Force base in Austin, Texas, and called Bergstrom Air Force Base. It's now the airport. And I was fortunate because it gave me a chance to really refine my craft. And I had an opportunity to operate a Mars station. And for those of you, did anybody know what a Mars station was? During the period of the Vietnam War, and a network of amateur radio operators got together all across the country and across the world, and they would create a radio contact with soldiers in Europe and Southeast Asia. And we were able to establish a contact with people and family at home. And so what we would do is that we would establish contact with another amateur radio operator in somebody's hometown, and then that amateur radio operator could call a family member and establish a telephone contact with the radio, and then whoever we had on the Mars station, from the soldier or airman, would have a live conversation, momentary as it was, could have a live contact. And you can only imagine how valuable that must have been for a mother or a wife or a father to be able to have that contact. And I felt really fulfilled in doing that. However, after my term was up in Austin, Texas, I got orders for Vietnam. That's when I got married the first time. And I called my girlfriend and I said, I just got orders from Vietnam. Do you want to get married? And she said, yeah. So I took a leave, went back to Memphis, Tennessee, and we got married. And you know what still rings in my ears is my brother looking at me and saying in the back of the room, in the back of the church, as I was waiting to walk out onto the dais, and he said, you know, it's not too late if you don't want to do this. And still rings in my ears. And you may have heard the stories of a lot of veterans who came back from Vietnam and whose marriages did not survive. And mine was one of those marriages. And it didn't have anything to do with my wife. It was me. It was all me. And it was what the torment that was in my life, that I couldn't sustain a relationship of value. And there is rarely a day goes by that I don't think about that price, that cost. And there are a lot of, when you think of your friends, your family, your children who are in the military, it's not just the threat of war and combat that causes this challenge in lives. It is the price that we pay in our souls for what we lose, what we do, what we set aside. We set our morals aside. We set our faith aside in order to fulfill our orders and do what is expected of us, for all of the right reasons, of course. And I thought that I was doing the right thing. But in my role in combat was to run airstrikes. So while there were people on the ground that were shooting back and forth at each other, and believe me, I know what an enemy tracer looks like at night. And I know what it looks like coming toward me and going away, believe me, and I know, and I've sustained mortar attacks, and I know what that thud sounds like and feels like, and the concussive effect of those things. And it's a terrorizing condition, and it's what keeps you from ever getting steady. Although you find a way, you find a way to substitute that terror with your friends, your fellow soldiers and airmen and sailors, and you find a way to cling to whatever your reality is that you can muster. And that's what I did. I don't know how, but I had a guitar that I carried throughout my time in Southeast Asia. That's something that TJ and I know about as veterans. And by the way, just a plug, we have a veterans Guitar Loving Vets that plays every Wednesday at the Vet Center. And it's a group of guys from all the campaigns, all the recent living campaigns. And we get together on Wednesdays and we play guitars and sing, and we have a wonderful fellowship. So anybody that's a vet interested in music and guitars, come to the Vet Center. Tonight we'll be there. So those are things that are reminiscent of my military experience. It's funny, Paul referred to being his rank was E2. And when I got to Vietnam, my rank was E3. And then I got my third stripe while I was in the field with a military advisory command team, MACV, we called it. And I got my third stripe, and that made me a buck sergeant. And in the history of military campaigns, the term buck sergeant usually referred to a combat assigned responsibility, a non-commissioned officer responsibility. I was 20 years old. 20 years old, think about that. And there are guys that are given responsibility to lead other men and protect other men when they're still teenagers and barely in their formative years. So when it comes to my military experience, there you go. Now, it wasn't always terrible, wasn't all terrible. When I came back from Vietnam, I was lucky enough to meet some people, and I was the co-founder of what was called, at Offutt Air Force Base, called the Helpline, and it was the first crisis intervention service in the Air Force. And I was lucky to get to be the NCOIC of the Helpline, and I felt that that was an important contribution that I needed to make. It was as much therapy for me as it was for other people. But that's what we call upon each other for every day now. And because there are more people that are stressed, not just from their military experience, but you've got to realize that people are at a heightened level of tension these days. And we need to be thoughtful and respectful and think about those people and their experiences. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you for your service, Howard. Now, Paul, I know that you got a passion for math, and that you have a thesis that you've been working on for quite some time. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, it goes back to the man who became my thesis advisor, as I indicated. He had a great passion for Immanuel Kant, and there's an international peace group, I forget the name, that he was very active in. But through those years working with Nelson, Professor Nelson, that was the question, what is knowledge? That was Immanuel Kant's main focus, and then Nelson was the professor in the class. And so I came away putting together, gaining insight into the question, what is knowledge? And then to me, one of the most elegant concepts in mathematics is an infinite series. I'll tell you a little more about that later. But putting those two together to gain insight into the question, what is knowledge, by thinking of infinite series. So, thanks to my thesis advisor, the question, what is the square root of 2? And it turns out my favorite philosopher, who died in 1804, had some significant things to say about the square root of 2 in a critique he wrote. Now, that's not a common word anymore. It comes out of the 18th century. Critique is a critical comments about the reasoning. And at the time, 1790, that Immanuel Kant wrote this critique, the question, what is the square root of 2, had been discussed among particular philosophers. But what is it? Well, he indicated that, this is what I'm
Hey, Paul. Sorry, could you lift your mic up just a little bit more?
Sorry about that.
Yep, no problem.
And I apologize, I could get carried away with this. But he indicated that, hey, if the square root of 2 is not a fraction, which goes back to a guy named Euclid, those of you that took geometry in high school, just a curious question, how many of you took geometry in high school and heard of Euclid? Put your hands up. Yes. Well, it's not talked about anymore. It's part of, this is one of the reasons I'm here, one of the things I'm promoting. Harley and I are talking about our history. A little aside. We live in a society in which the prevalent attitude toward history is indifference, especially among mathematicians and philosophers. And those of us aware have a responsibility, and I'm one of those, to resist this indifference, and that's what I'm doing. And so my dissertation, I'm out of the program, but I'm writing the paper, motivates me to ease out of bed and get on with my day, is an exposition of what Immanuel Kant had to say about the square root of 2, and then bringing in the history of the calculus, which came later, which enabled mathematicians to give a precise answer to what is the square root of 2, even though it's not a fraction. And it's a wondrous top of a mountain. But that motivates me to ease out of bed and get on with my day, studying, writing what would have been my dissertation, and mentoring elementary students who are hungry to learn math. In fact, for those of you women in class, I have to share this story. She's now in 6th grade, so I don't get to mentor her. But I first started with her 3 years ago when she was in 3rd grade. And when we finished last year, she was knocking on the door of the calculus in 5th grade. Now, she said to me, well, when I was in kindergarten, my mother taught me 3rd grade math. So, have any of you seen the movie Gifted? It's about a 2nd grade girl. Well, that's my 5th grader. Oh my, I see. Yeah. And she's now in 6th grade, but I've got 2 4th graders, and I've got a 3rd grader that I'm mentoring, working with. Yes. And it's my calling with my dad. May he rest in peace. It took a long time. That's my calling as math teacher, philosopher. Dad was a math teacher preacher, and I'm a math teacher philosopher. Like Harley indicated, I got out of the Army and I became an agnostic. Oh yeah, I denying. The big deal was, well, how do you know it exists? But I ultimately came to realize, Paul, your agnosticism, this denial, is preventing you from finding your mission, purpose, calling. And there's a guy named ADD just kicked in. He's a New England philosopher, psychologist. His name will come to me. But reading, and he wrote several treatises on religion, and reading and rereading him helped me come, to affirm my mission, purpose, calling as math teacher philosopher. So that's a.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Harley, tell us a little bit about your time playing music down in Austin and playing around professionally.
Oh yeah, saved my life. Boy, saved my life. My music career began when I was 5 years old, and my grandmother would make me lead the singing at Milo's, which was the little 5-year-old Sunday school group. And because I was with her and raised in the church, I knew all the songs. So I was expected to lead the singing. And luckily for me, I could carry a tune with or without a bucket. And my family always had music. My mother played piano, and she loved gospel music, and she was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse for a period of time, drove a horse and buggy to go teach. And she loved playing the piano, so she always played piano for church where my grandfather preached. And as a family, we always sang. And when we became a blended family, when my mother married a second time, then we gained 4 more kids in the family, and now there were 9 of us. And we had enough for 2 quartets, a boys quartet and a girls quartet and a mixed quartet, 3 quartets. And then we could cover the entire spectrum. So early in my musical career, I sang obviously tenor, and then first and second. alto, and then eventually first and second bass, which is what I did for state chorus when I was in high school. And I one time had a 5-octave range, and that was according to an engineer in a recording studio when I was doing voiceovers and writing music for jingles. And that was coming before I went to Vietnam. When I was assigned to the Air Force Base in Austin, Texas, Austin was a very rich musical town at that time. Although Austin is about keeping Austin weird, if you've ever seen any of the advertisements for Austin, Texas. It's the weird music capital of the world. It's also the loud music capital of the world. I lived down there for 6 years. Anyway, before I went to Vietnam, I was stationed at Bergstrom Air Force Base, and I got to know the people in the USO. And the USO took people from the base into town to do different activities, and there was a USO center where we could kind of acclimate to the human society apart from the military. And I found my way to a folk nightclub called the Checkered Flag. And at the Checkered Flag, I was fortunate enough to meet people like Jerry Jeff Walker and Gordon Lightfoot. And I was playing my own guitar at that time. And I actually was offered a job at the nightclub to serve, to draw beer and to make setups. So that was, a setup was using a wine and a spritzer, making a spritzer. So that's in the days when Austin was in a dry county, and so you couldn't serve liquor. And so we could set up bottles. You could bring your own bottle in, and we could give you a Coke or a 7-Up to go with it. Anyway, I'd be drawing beers and making setups, and then when I wasn't doing that, I'd go to the door and watch the stage, and I'd watch all these wonderful acoustic players from Texas and New Mexico, and wonderful sounds, all acoustic. It was great. What a venue. And I was fortunate enough to even play on that stage. One time I got to sing 2 songs, never recorded, and it was for a small group. I think only 5 people in the audience at the time. But anyway, that was my first introduction to performing with the guitar. I kept playing my guitar through my military experience, and then after I got out of the military in 1972, I had a difficult time figuring out what I was going to do with my life. And so I tried a couple of different things. I worked at Nebraska Psychiatric Institute, where we used to say that the only difference between us and the patients was that we had the keys. And then that was more therapy for me at that time. I was a counselor at Boys Town for a while. That was really interesting until I had a major disagreement with the leadership about behavioral conditioning. And then I found myself just struggling, and I was living out of my car. I was homeless for a while, and were it not for a few friends that would let me use their showers, and I was able to keep clean and find a place to sleep from time to time. And somebody once said, you've been playing at these birthday parties and other stuff like that. Why don't you try singing for a living? And so I got introduced to a couple of people who said, yeah, I know somebody that's looking for a musician to work off nights, non-weekends, but for $25 a night. And I said, I'll take it. And so I auditioned and got the job. And I started my musical career in Omaha, Nebraska, at the Golden Apple. I don't know if you've been to that. It's been gone for a long, long time. But it was a wonderful venue, and then the person who played weekends eventually moved on, and I moved up to weekends, and then it was $35 a night. And I thought that I'd really gotten a major raise. And then I started doing work at recording studios with an advertising company called Lozelle and Jacobs. And I wrote a couple of jingles for some newspapers and a couple of banks, and then I started recording a few things and traveling about what we called the corn cob circuit, which was kind of Omaha being the crossroads, I-80 east and west, like Lincoln, Grand Island, Des Moines, and then north and south, which was Sioux City and Sioux Falls, and down to down around Kansas City, St. Joe, and so I was working the corn cob circuit, and right up until I met my wife, who had already had our daughter from previous marriage, and so I continued to do that until our daughter became school age. And then I thought maybe it's time to get a real job with some real future to it, and that's when I went back to college. But I've tried to continue to keep my guitar skills up, and luckily for me, I now play several times a week, either at home. I have increased my collection of guitars from 1 to 7. My wife says if I buy another guitar, I have to find another home to keep it in. So I have a collection that are of enormous sentimental value. I have the first guitar that I ever played with, and I use the term gig with. So when I was doing gigs, I have that guitar, which I traded for with a patient that was at NPI. And I traded him my steel string guitar for this nylon string guitar, and I named her Ruby, and I still have Ruby. And then in 1975, I bought my first really expensive guitar for $360 from Hospice Music in downtown Lincoln, Nebraska. And I still have that guitar. And then I have exceeded my limit, obviously, with what I have at home. But every guitar has a different voice, and when I want to play and listen to a different voice other than my own, then I pull the guitars out and play different kinds of music. And now I get to enjoy that voicing on Wednesdays with my friends and fellow vets every Wednesday. And every now and then I can remember a song that I used to sing when my wife would follow me around to different gigs. And so every now and then I can still play a couple of those songs that she remembers that she always would ask for. So that's my story.
Love that. Go ahead.
TJ, I want to change a bit, which is not a change actually, for the benefit of you women particularly. I have mentioned a lot about my dad and about my thesis advisor. My mother, may she rest in peace, was responsible for, I'm the oldest, my brother, my sister, and my growing up in wisdom. And to explain that a bit, I go back to age 12. So I was going through the confirmation experience in the Methodist Church in North Rose, my hometown. And again, I mentioned I was reading the Bible, particularly passages dealing with knowledge and wisdom and reason. And I said to Mom and Dad at one point, I don't feel ready for your questions. I haven't lived long enough. I don't have enough knowledge. And I said to myself, you did just say that. At any rate, Mom said, son, there's something you need to understand. we need you to make a commitment now so the Catholics don't get you. This was a small white Protestant town. But decades later, I realized, now, time out a minute. The word Catholic with a capital C, that's a particular religious group, Christian religious group. Make it a small c. It's not a common word, but it means universal. And I realized decades later, what my mother was saying to me was, son, don't let the status-seeking, material acquiring values in society distract you from your journey. She was spot on. And so I had to share that, yes.
Love that. Harley, on the podcast, you mentioned kind of a little side story about a certain famous musician that you met down in Austin. You want to tell us that one?
Oh, this is a story about Jerry Jeff Walker. Oh, yeah. I was when I was working at the Checkered Flag. There was a fellow named Alan Damron who ran the Checkered Flag, and he was a musician, a good musician in his own right, and very dynamic musician. And he booked all of the acts that came in and screened everybody. And frequently, if the big names like Jerry Jeff Walker, Gordon Lightfoot came, then they would often have a reception. The owners of the nightclub also had a speed museum, so they were into fast cars and Formula cars, and so they had an area back behind the musical area where they had all these antiques and they had race cars, and they would have these receptions. And so they were planning a reception for Jerry Jeff Walker. And I was fortunate enough to get to meet Jerry Jeff, but at the reception. But prior to the reception, when Jerry Jeff came to town, he met up with the director of the USO, which became a friend, and she was kind of a surrogate mom to all of us, all of the military. And so she invited him over to the USO. There were a group of us sitting around listening to Jerry Jeff, and just we were all agape, at Jerry Jeff Walker, and meeting somebody like him was a pretty big deal. And although the guy that played before he got there was also a well-known 12-string guitar player, which his name escapes me, but it'll come to me, to use Paul's term. And anyway, we were sitting there and we were talking about music and his lifestyle, and somebody mentioned the fact that he wrote this song about Mr. Bojangles. Anybody familiar with that song? I knew a man Bojangles and he danced for me. Okay, so he said, somebody said to him as he was taking questions, Jerry Jeff, tell us the truth. How did you meet Bojangles? And Jerry Jeff very adroitly grabbed his guitar and pulled it up, and he started playing. He said, I met him in the cell in New Orleans. I was down and out. And he went right into the song, and it was just one of these pristine moments, where you couldn't have scripted it better. But that was a fulfillment of one of my bucket lists for sure, was to have met Jerry Jeff Walker that way. And then after the night he played, we had the reception for him, and then he played at the at the Checkered Flag. And then there was a lot of drinking and smoking that went on after that, and I can't remember everything, Probably just as well. I can't remember everything that transpired that night, but I remember getting up. I think I woke up on somebody's couch, and I think Alan Damron was shaking me and saying, "Get up, Hartley, get up." Jerry Jeff is gonna leave, getting ready to leave. And so I went out into the alley with Alan Damron, and Jerry Jeff Walker was loading his guitar in the back of an old Corvette, 58-ish genre. And it was, as you might know, the Corvettes of that era were fiberglass. And this one was in need of severe repair. And it had been painted maybe 2 or 3 times and then sanded 2 or 3 times, so it looked pretty mottled. And the top was down, and I remember watching him put his guitar in the back, and he was on his way to Los Angeles, where he, California, where he then later cut another album. And the last vision I have of Jerry Jeff Walker was firing up that Corvette and shooting down the alley with a bottle of, would have been Jack Daniels, in one hand. And as he was getting ready to take a big swig of that Jack Daniels, and I thought, wow, that's living large. But that's my story. I mean, I saw him many times after that, having been in Austin in recent years, seeing him live on stage. It's always been a pleasure. But I think about that.
Awesome, thanks for the story.
Could we have, anybody has questions for us?
We will get to that.
Oh, okay.
But I do got a few more questions for you guys before we get to that. So we're going to kind of shift gears here and talk about the importance of telling stories and why that's important. So what's the moment maybe that you guys realized that your stories would be worth sharing?
Reaching the age of 80, I'm 82, realized, well, my dad used to have a expression that he used, that's an old timer. And that was someone who had lived and had wisdom. And having gone through adversity in my life, I gradually came to realize I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've lived long enough that I don't need to make them again, but that I've got something to share with people. I've lived, I've had the good fortune, the blessings of finding my way to where now the prairie is deep in my soul. But in the Midwest, I have a woman I love dearly, been married to 22 years. I have blessings, but I have a responsibility to share this with other people. And I think I indicated one, we live in a society in which prevalent attitudes toward history is indifference. Those of us aware have a responsibility, and I take that responsibility seriously. Again, having lived, I now hear myself telling my younger friends who are all up in arms about various political things going on, and I say to them, think long term. Go back and think about the 60s. There's Supreme Court decisions, and I've watched some of the movies again, but I realize I've lived long enough. Think long term. Well, that means that's also a responsibility to share, which I'm doing.
Yeah, well said, well said.
Same question, Harley.
You know, my grandmother once said to me, she was born in 1900, and I think about that, that's, my goodness, that's a long time ago. And I remember her saying to me one time that she was amazed that she had seen the first automobile. She remembered seeing her first automobile, and she was raised in a sod house on the Colorado prairie. And she homesteaded not once, but twice. And she had journeyed 2 weeks in a horse-drawn wagon to get to their first homestead in Kemmerer, Wyoming. So she knew what it was like to live hard and live rough. And she said that she remembered the first car she saw. And she remembered the first airplane she saw overhead. And she remembered the advent of the industrialization of the United States and the assembly line. And she was the first certified teacher in Colorado at age of 18. So she taught in a one-room schoolhouse before that. And she also rode her pony to school from the sod house. But when she told me about that, I recognized the richness of my heritage and the legacy that she shared with me. And she would tell me stories about my grandfather, although I knew him, but he never spoke about his youth, and he never spoke about World War I. And he drove ammunition wagons, mule-drawn ammunition wagons through France and Belgium. And at night, and my grandmother used to say that soldiers trekking along the roads at night and the trails through the mountains would often hitch rides on my grandfather's wagon because he was the safest mule driver on the trails. And oftentimes those wagons would go over the mountainsides, and because there were people that just couldn't skin those mules. And when I'd ask my grandfather about that, he said, you just gotta call them by name. You know, you talk to them and you call them by name. So the value of telling stories is about sharing the legacy, and that enriches our value, our family values. And then as those experiences get shared, and I learned this when I was doing crisis intervention, is that the first time you think about losing a loved one, and then that experience gives you the ability to counsel someone else who loses a loved one, because at least you can relate to what you went through, and so that they know that other people have gone through that, and you know that in your own lives. And that value that you get to share, call it wisdom or just companionship or fellowship, whatever it is, it makes it important, as Paul was saying so eloquently. It is a responsibility that I feel that I have to share with my children and my grandchildren. I recently gave my grandfather's flag that draped his coffin, and my grandfathers on both sides, by the way, were in World War I. So I have my grandfather on my father's side, I have his flag that draped his coffin. And I recently gave that to my son, my oldest son. So now it's time to pass down those things. And I'm contemplating a table that I have that was given to my grandmother and grandfather by his grandmother. And that drop leaf table, when you think about how many people have sat and taken meals at that table. And I did as a kid. And matter of fact, there's probably still a couple of knife marks on that, that are my fault. And that sits in a place of honor. So that's how we honor our ancestry, is by sharing those stories and maintaining that value. Not just the wisdom of what we know at growing old. And certainly there is that value. I'd like to think that I'm more confident now than I ever was. But I'm not sure, because there's still somebody I meet that goes through something, and I find out about it and I think, wow, they're telling their story to me made a difference even now. And so I think that that's the value of sharing the story for wisdom and legacy.
All right. When you guys agreed to be on Senior Stories, were you nervous about it at all? And was there anything that surprised you about after the interview?
I'll let you go first, I gotta meditate.
No. You know, at this point, and you can tell about my life story that I've been a musician, I've been an educator, another parallel that we have. I've trained a lot of medical professionals and physicians, and I think that that makes it easy for me. That makes it pretty comfortable for me, although I still get a little shaky every now and then because I value the response, and I don't want to be useless. I don't want to say things that are meaningless and unimportant. So I'd like to make sure that everything I say is worthwhile.
How about you, Paul?
I relate to what Harley's saying. When TJ initially asked me to share my story, again, being 82, I've lived long enough and I have a sense now it's a story I need to share. It's that responsibility, but I do have some things to share. But yeah, I realized this morning, yeah, I was feeling some tension, sure, that I'm going to be on the spot a bit. It was a combination of getting to share my story, but yeah, the tension. So both.
Was there any part of your guys' stories that you weren't planning to share that you ended up sharing?
No. Turns out to be, and I thought about that. One of the things my wife said to me, and after seeing the part of the podcast that I did, she said, you know, you always tend to talk about your family and not about our family. And then I thought, well, people don't want me to air my dirty laundry. You know, if I were to tell you about all the crises in my life and the issues that I've had in my family, you don't want to hear that. And you don't want to get so depressed that, you know, you leave the meeting early. So, you know, I thought, some things I'm happy to talk about. And then if we were friends and we were sipping coffee or having a beer or doing a gummy together, then we might feel okay with that.
How about you, Paul?
As I thought about what I wanted to share, there's the details of living that we all go through that I didn't want to get overwhelmed and want to overwhelm you with those. So I tried to think about how do I try to describe my journey as a flowing. And as it relates to people, I call them non-headline people that have been in my life. They don't make headlines, but quietly along the way they come up, I'll keep going. And I'm very, as I look back, I'm very fortunate. The minister, my parents, my thesis advisor, others never made headlines, but along the way, come on, Paul, keep going. And so I'm blessed with those. So I wanted to just try to present in a flowing sense of my journey. And so, yay.
Great. You know, what, if people are out here and wondering kind of about how they could tell their story, is there, you know, not everybody's as amazing as speakers as you guys are. Do you guys have any advice? Is there anything that they can do that isn't necessarily public speaking that you can think of to be able to tell their story?
Yeah, put your mind in motion before you put your mouth in gear. My grandfather was always good about those little quips when he was behind the lectern, and his wisdom was pretty good. He used to tell a story about a minister who conducted every Sunday, who would conduct a testimonial period in his services. And it got to the point where there was always the same guy. Oh, it was always the same guy in church that would stand up and give his testimony. And some of the young guys in the church thought that was kind of silly. And, you know, it was pretty much always the same thing. It was, I'm grateful for this, or I'm grateful for that. And my grandfather went on to say that the week leading up to the service had been a really stormy week, and it was in the springtime planting season. And the rain was enormous, and the fields were in terrible shape. Any farmers out here that kind of know how that goes? And so these fellas, these young boys, had watched this farmer, and my grandfather always referred to, when it came to farming, he was always related to mules and single plows and those kinds of things before the age of machinery. And so these boys made this quip to each other that said, you know, old Mr. So-and-so, he won't have anything good to say, you know, about at the church service on Sunday. And so sure enough, they waited, and the preacher, as usual, said, anybody like to give a testimony for something they're thankful for? And this old fella got up, as usual, from his same place, same position in the pew that he's always occupied for years. And he stood up and he said, I'm thankful that not every week is like this one. So, obviously, planning in your head, composing in your mind, and organizing is always the right thing to do. As an educator, I was always, in preparing my presentations, particularly in slides and that sort of thing, was to compose based on an outline. So I always knew what the general objectives of what my presentation was going to be. I knew what those objectives were, and I tried to stay true to that. And then I try to compose in ways that that achieve the old axiom that brevity is the soul of wit. So keep it simple, keep it short, and be funny when you can.
How about you, Paul? Same question.
Well, I would say, recognize you've lived. Each of us is unique. You have a unique story to share. You may not, I have the good fortune, I have the genes I inherited, I believe, from my dad, that I'm comfortable talking before a group. Not everybody has that, but share with fellow people in your church, in your home, your grandchildren, young people that you encounter, just in a casual sharing manner. Also recognize that part of being youth and part of being not youth is many youth have lived long enough. They may not necessarily pay attention, but that's okay, give them time. But each of us is unique. We do have something to share.
I love that. What would your advice be if there's anybody out there on the fence about maybe wanting to be on the podcast? Would you have any advice for them?
Yeah, seek your comfort level. If you have a question about that, talk it over with TJ. There are fewer people on the planet than TJ that can be sensitive about your concerns. And if you think you have a story that other people will benefit from, then talk it over with TJ or talk it over with your friends. Remember this, that there are people that will tell you, yeah, you ought to do it. You just ought to talk about that. And the key word is oughta. And it's not necessarily what you ought to do, it's what you want to do. So if you want to do that, then I encourage you to do that. But discuss that with someone like TJ who's sensitive about those things, and you can probably already tell that he's not a velvet hammer. He's not going to pry things out of you that you don't want to say. As a matter of fact, when we did our podcast, we played some music together, with some of which is in the podcast, but we shared stories between us before we did the podcast. So there's often that relationship development that you get when you're talking with someone like TJ, or it's measuring up anybody else. If you've ever been on an airplane and you're sitting in the right seat, you feel compelled to have a conversation with somebody on either side of you. You know how that works? And sometimes you just feel compelled to do that. So I think follow your heart, and do what you think is right.
What about you?
Just reinforce what Harley said, but something just clicked back in my mind. My dad's mother, may she rest in peace, lived on a farm. She could make baked rice pudding in a wood stove that was divine. But anyway, after grandfather, her husband, died, grandmother moved near mom and dad where we lived, and lived in an apartment. And I took grandmother to a church social one supper. And she sat down, the person next to her happened to live in the same town she grew up in. Total strangers. And they had a conversation for an hour and a half. I was just enthralled listening to them. Just salt of the earth people sharing. And that's who we are.
Yeah, love it. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions from the audience, and I will walk around with the microphone. Does anybody have any questions for these gentlemen?
I'm curious about his t-shirt. What's his t-shirt say?
Yeah, I
What's
guess
your
it's-
t-shirt say, and what's it mean?
We can't see it.
Okay, so his t-shirt says, "Dear Algebra, please stop asking us to find your ex. She's never coming back, and don't ask why."
My wife got it for me.
First of all, thank you for serving. Thank you very much. We haven't always shown the appreciation that we could have shown. My question is actually, have you ever gone back to Vietnam or ever thought about it or think it's an awful idea?
I would like to go back. I want to go back. I've had the good fortune of teaching some Vietnamese students here, and they thank me greatly when they find out that, oh, I taught where you live. I want to go back, yes.
I'm on the fence. I still carry some memories. I still see myself in a helicopter flying over and seeing all the bomb craters, and then the rolling of the helicopter. And I was sat when I was on the helicopter. I was sat next to the door gunner because there was a post there that I could hang on to. And then so there are an awful lot of memories that I'm still having issues with unseeing, and I hear stories about that aren't really well published about some of those areas where there's unexploded ordnance and some of those kinds of things. although I know that there's a lot of commerce in there, I talked to a lot of veterans that found closure going back over there. So I've thought about it, and I've done some satellite imaging of some of the areas where I was, and it's all different. It doesn't have any, I can't see any of the landmarks that I used to see when I was over there, and I spent time on the ground and in the air. So I saw pretty much a 360-degree perspective of that, but it's an interesting question. Yeah, it is.
I think you'd find that the people there are very appreciative of you and really respect you, as you probably respect them too. So it's scary to go back, I'm sure, but I think it would be rewarding. I've been there twice. Never served, obviously, but you know, it was quite a wonderful experience.
Yeah, you know, when I was in country and I was having a conversation with one of our interpreters, and I said, and we'd had a few beers, so we were speaking pretty candidly. And I said, what do you expect from us? What do you want from us? And he said, for you to go home. And I have to be honest that, you know, I remember what we did to their economy. And for those of you who are unaware, we destroyed their economy. We destroyed it. We devalued their currency. We flooded their currency with our currency. And then we took jobs and we just destroyed it. And that was part of the intention, you know, was to devalue South Vietnam so that North Vietnam wouldn't come there. So obviously there's a few things that I hold, that I think about, I still think about when it comes to Vietnam, as to what I experienced when I was there. And I was not one of the guys that lifted my rifle and looked another guy in the eyes, although I've had a gun pointed at me by another Vietnamese, so I know what it's like to be threatened. As I said, I know what it's like to be in a firefight, but I was huddled in a bunker and just could see outside the bunker. Matter of fact, someone took my M16 from me and moved to another bunker and engaged the fight. So there are things that I still haven't let go of, you know, and in spite of my enlightenment, and I'd like to think that I'm pretty well enlightened at this point. Although when I was a respiratory therapist, I was running a respiratory therapy department in McCook. Anybody from McCook? And there was a Vietnamese immigrant that was an officer, and I did pulmonary exam and testing with him, and he couldn't speak any English, and I only had, you know, a few conversational phrases that that I could remember, and none of them were complimentary. That's kind of the way things were, and I think if I went back to Vietnam, I think that a lot of that would lead back. I'm not sure quite how to manage that.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and have somebody start picking up the surveys if we do that. And we'll go ahead and take, we'll take one more question while they're picking those up. Anybody have another question? We're good?
Did we do good?
All right, well, thank you, Harley. Thank you, Paul, for coming here and sharing your story and kind of telling us. Now, if any of you guys on those surveys that we're picking up, if you guys want to be a part of a senior story or to be able to tell your story, there is a box on there that you can mark, and I will get a hold of you. We are going to go ahead and have our educational partners kind of line up with your door prizes. The next seminar. Okay, so Mom, the question, they'd like to know a little bit about the next seminar.
Okay, so everybody will have fun at the next seminar. And what we try to do in January at our seminars is kind of make it hopeful for the new year that's coming in. And we're going to talk about new you, resetting and refocus and reclaiming your joy. And we're going to have a kind of a different panel, and it's going to be fun and it's going to be enlightening. So I hope you do come and join us for that one. And we are going to let our educational partners tell us a little bit about themselves. And we do have a drawing for all the evaluations that were completely filled out.
And if any of you have brought a friend, go ahead and raise your hand while they're telling us about their stuff, and I'll come around and give you your bring a friend gift. So.
Hi, I'm Val Heaton with Caring Friends in Home Care. We're a non-medical home care company. We help with things at home that are called activities of daily living. So getting up, getting dressed, taking a shower, getting a meal, those type of things. We help provide services in the home for that. If you or any friends that you know are needing recovery from a surgery, let's say, like my mother-in-law had shoulder surgery and we were able to help with those type of activities when she was recovering, that's the kind of stuff we do. And we cover from Lincoln all the way out to North. So we have a pretty big footprint if you have friends or family in that area. Today I brought a little Christmas decor and some Trader Joe's sweets. So are you going to do all the introductions first or are we drawing first?
We'll do the introduction and then we'll do the drawing.
Hi everyone, my name is Reagan. I'm with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm going to let my colleague Alex talk about an event that we have coming up. And for our little gifts, we have a candle and some cozy socks.
Hi, my name is Alex DeGarmo. I'm the Director of Public Policy for the Alzheimer's Association. On January 28th, we'll be having our State Advocacy Day. We'd love for you to come join us there and turn the state capitol purple. If you want any more information about it, please come see me. We have cards out front.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm with Sage Living by Tabitha, independent senior living community. What makes us very special and unique is that we also are an intergenerational community. So we have college students, in particular Bryan College of Health Science students, who also live in our community, and the two generations get to share experiences and wisdom and advice with one another. I also want to share an event that I'm having tomorrow at my community. It is a soup, songs, and sourdough. So we are having soup, artisan breads, Christmas cookies, and St. Teresa's sixth graders will be there performing their holiday performance. That is from 11:30 to 1:30 tomorrow at Sage Living, which is 47th and L Street. Hope you all can make it. I do have flyers up here, and I brought a cozy blanket as my gift.
Hello everybody, my name is Taylor and I'm with Archibald Health. We are a primary care provider's office here in Lincoln designed for seniors. So we only see folks that are 60 and older. Some things about us is that we see a lot fewer patients than your typical primary care provider to allow you more time to spend with your provider. So if you're struggling with things such as making appointments and getting in when you want to get into your provider and the length of visit with your provider, that's where we come in. We do work with Medicare Advantage plans to allow more access to your provider on a daily basis if you need it. So if you're looking for a new primary care provider here in Lincoln, give us a shout. Today, I think I am that guy. There's always one guy or gal here every month that has a gift card. So that's me today because I failed to get a fun gift. So Hy-Vee $25 gift card if you are the lucky winner for us.
Josh Pennerman, Pennerman Law. I offer estate resources. Just enjoy working with people and families that are looking to simplify things during the estate administration process, or just make sure that your assets and your legacies are protected. I guess I will be the second guy. I did. I put it in a fancy bag. I have a gift card to the Metal Grill here in town.
My name is Bobby Holland with Gateway Vista here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we offer independent living, assisted living, short-term rehab, and long-term care along with outpatient therapy. So today I brought a massage and neck pillow and a s'mores kit.
Hello, I'm Lisa Tayo with Organized by Design. If your goal is to relocate and be organized in 2026, then give me a call. So we do a lot of downsizing, organizing, setting up people, just basically getting them organized. I have a gift basket. Last time I had these pot holders that were handmade and a little festive mug. So yeah, so that's what I'm giving away.
I am Tanya Godwin with Oasis Senior Advisors. I've spoke with many of you today and it's been so much fun. So thank you for stopping by. We are a free resource to you, and we just kind of come at everything from a 35,000 foot view. And a lot of these folks standing right here we refer to, and it's wonderful to work together with them. They're great partners. What we brought today, we actually found this cool thing if you're one of those organized kind of type A personalities. Sorry. So this is one of these things I wish everybody had, and it's called Putting Things in Order to Help My Loved Ones When I'm Gone. And it's everything from your social media passwords. You know, if you had like rental property and you passed away, does anybody else know that that money is owed to you? Would there be some follow-up? Do you have funeral plans? Those type of things. It's really, really good. There is a cute little desk calendar in here, and everybody needs Christmas cards, and we got to top it off the Christmas season with some chocolate bars. And one of them is s'mores flavored. So, yeah, channeling my inner Bobby. There we go.
Copycat. Hello, my name is David Tuttle. I am a 16-year veteran with American Senior Benefits. What that means is there's nothing you could need or would need in your retirement years that I can't do for you, okay? And what I want to make sure everyone remembers, Sunday, December 7th, is the last day of the annual enrollment period. I know everybody in this room probably already got it all figured out, right? But if you run across anybody that doesn't know what they're going to do, Sunday the 7th is the last day you can make changes and so forth. So just alert you, tell everybody that you know that we're here for you. I'll work until Sunday at midnight, and then I'm driving to Illinois. But you know, so what I have for you is something soft. I saw this one. Oh, I want it. But it's a very soft knit, cozy, wearable, and it's neutral color, just so everybody knows that. I just want to, yeah, I was gonna get the pink one, and I thought, no, I better not. I want to go universal. So anyway, that's what I have today.
Hi everyone, I'm Marshall with Chloe Wealth. We are located about 59th and Old Cheney. First time here, so thanks for the welcome. We offer financial planning, wealth management, estate and legacy planning, and much more. I bought some wine charcuterie boards, set of 2. So if you're a wine drinker, there you go.
Hello, my name is Natalie Leon. I am Visiting Angels. We provide home care services for older adults, and so we can go into our clients' homes and help them stay where they want to stay, which is usually their home. So my lovely gift basket is actually items that we had in our office because I too, at 5 o'clock yesterday, realized I did not have my gift. So, we have a lovely Visiting Angels blanket, because who doesn't need a blanket in their home? We have a little cozy candle from Wax Buffalo. We actually created our own scents with them, and so this one is Delicate Dove. We got to name it as well, so Visiting Angels Dove. And then we have a lovely room spray. And then who doesn't need a bottle of wine to cozy up with your lovely blanket and candle? So that is our little gift.
Hello, I'm Rose Lyle with Nebraska Realty, and our team leader is Alicia, and TJ's on the team, and then we also are expanding to Omaha, and so we have Paul that's just joining us, and also Jason. And any of us could help you with anything house related. If you want to stay in your home and you need to know what to do to make it safer or more comfortable, we can do that. If you want to downsize into another home, we have a downsizing club. We can help you if you need an estate sale to get rid of things, if you'd like to go to a community, and like you had heard all the different ones on the panel last month talk about how much they love going to the communities and living where you don't have to cook or do anything. So just about anything home related we can help you with. And all of you have been here for quite some time. I noticed there wasn't really any new people hardly holding their hand up today. So we were going to ask who would like to give us a video testimonial of how you've enjoyed coming here over the last year or so. Is there anyone today that would like to volunteer to give a video testimonial?
Yes, we would love to have that, because we want to put some of these up on our website. And if you don't feel like doing it here, we are willing to have you come to our office, because we have a studio there and we can film it there. Only it has to be like 15, 30 seconds. But just tell us what you like about coming to Savvy Seniors so that you can share that with other people.
Do we have one volunteer?
Right there. Right here. Right here.
Right in front of me? All right. So our
I saw that finger go up.
Yeah, just barely. I have a wonderful gift for you. For you being the first one to give testimony.
And was this donated by Lexington?
Yes.
Yes, and this was donated by Julie, visiting here from Lexington. Okay, so now we're gonna make some friends.
And I gotta give this away. It's a soup snack bowl. So after you eat all the snacks out of it, it'll make a
Right.
nice soup bowl for you.
Okay, so we are going to have our drawing. And if your name is drawn, you just come up, you'll get the first one from Caring Friends. And we're gonna let Harley and Paul, I was thinking your name was Dave Durbin for some reason. So Harley and Paul are gonna make the friends, okay? So you wanna go ahead and pull one out? Okay. Charlie Freeman, or Clarice Freeman, is she still here? Okay, come on and get this one. The next one, go ahead and pull another one, Paul. Get it ready. Okay, is Kim Jenick? Okay, Kim. All right. And Elisa Stewart? Okay. And Susan Duran? And Sharon Kelly. Sharon, are you still here? Okay. And Ramona Faber. Ramona, I think you win every month. She is lucky. Take her to the casinos with you. Okay. Judy Schutz. Judy. Ruth DeGarmo. Ruth, are you still here? Okay. Bob Berman. Great. Lee Bring, are you still here, Lee? Okay, good job. And Joan Hudson. Joan, okay. And one more. Oh wait, this one goes, was this Thank you. No. Oh, okay. Okay, we got one more. Mary Tintera. Mary, Marcy. I know you're Marcy. So we want to give our educational partners a big hand. They help sponsor this. They bring this information to you. They're amazing people. And they're waiting out in the hall. And if you have any questions for them, they'd be happy to answer them. And we want to give one more time, a big round to our panelists here today and to TJ for bringing these stories to you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for coming.